off kilter today. You're off kilter today. You haven't packed the house.
I saw the look in your
No.
eye.
We didn't. This agenda. Wait till the next one.
Yeah,
I could get you guys lunch. Want the same thing we ordered last time?
sure,
Sure.
sure,
Salads.
sure. Keeps it
I
simple.
wanted pastrami.
Notice in the paper this morning, the format of the paper. So in the paper.
Yes, I saw that.
Corned
Your
beef
eye
fry
was
with
not in there.
mustard.
No.
And
Talking
it-
about
No,
Make it
I
good.
keep it simple, keep it simple.
From New York,
You know, if they're gonna
Yeah.
switch the
Vodka on
day.
the rocks,
from
please.
Sardi's preferably.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Or maybe tomorrow.
That's fine.
And I need something with no onions.
And
I
again,
don't care what it is, just no onions.
they're doing us a service by putting it in.
Yeah,
So,
and people look for it.
I know that,
That's, thank
but
you,
I
that's
noticed
true.
it wasn't in there. I had to weed my way through because it's a totally different format.
Yeah.
But
Good morning. Welcome to the June 19th, 2019 Punta Gorda City Council meeting. Let the record reflect that all city council members and city officials are present. Let us stand for the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Heavenly Father, we ask for your help as we try to share our individual and collective gifts with our community, to refurbish our intentions in a regular manner, to give of ourselves in ways that make a valued difference to our families, to our neighbors, to our town, and to our nation. All these things we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Well, thank you for getting out in the wet weather to get here today. Fortunately, we didn't have a heavy storm or anything while you were trying to get here. And there is one item I'd like to call to your attention, just as far as the agenda is concerned. And if you will turn to the last page of the agenda, it's item 8B for the city attorney. This is an item where the city attorney is going to have a closed client session with the city council. We're going to move that down to just before we adjourn. So what we will do is we will go through the entire agenda as normal. We will have the council member comments, we will have citizens' comments, so you will not miss out on anything that is of a public nature in this meeting. And that way, then you can leave, we can go into the session, and then we'll come back in here. Nobody will be here, but we'll come back in here and then officially adjourn. So that's how we'll handle it, so that you won't miss anything, and you don't have to hang around.
And as clarification, when the city council comes back, there'll be no further discussion regarding the item that was closed to the public.
Yes, all we will do is come in and adjourn the meeting. So, any questions, comments?
I motion we adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Then we will start off with the first item on the agenda is a presentation for a Distinguished Service Award. And I'm going to turn that over to Chief Briggs.
Chief Briggs, Fire Chief. So today we have a great opportunity. I've got Chief Ryan Lamb from City of Cape Coral with us. He's gonna actually make presentation for an award for one of our employees. You may recognize him. You can kind of head this way. John Briggs. You may recognize him a little bit for some exemplary service that he did on his day off. Actually, I think the award really deserves to go to his family as much as him. So you'll get more of that detail in just a second. Chief.
Thanks, sir. Ryan Lamb, Fire Chief, City of Cape Coral. Before I start this morning, I just want to quickly say I actually started my career as a volunteer firefighter here in the city of Punta Gorda, and personally got to work with both Chief Briggs, and just want to say I can speak to their character, and you guys have a lot to be proud of in your fire department.
Thank you.
This morning, though, we'd like to recognize Chief John Briggs for his service to the city of Cape Coral on, I believe it was Easter Sunday. I was driving through the city of Cape Coral and noticed some smoke coming from a residence. He didn't have to stop, but he took the initiative to go over and investigate, and he found a fire on the side of a structure, of a residential structure. Residents were still inside, and so he quickly extinguished the fire with a garden hose well before our fire crews were notified and arrived. If it wouldn't have been for his actions, the home would have been a complete loss, and with the people still inside, who knows, possibly worse. So we want to recognize his distinguished public service.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Chief Lamb, thank everybody. I was just doing what anyone would have done in the same circumstances, and so, thank you.
Your kids have... John, your family was with you at the time?
Yes.
Did they help out?
Yes, actually, my wife probably deserves most of the credit, because when we pulled up, she yelled at me, "Jump out and do something. Go put that fire out." I had no choice. I couldn't keep driving on, so I just had to.
That's what she says at the barber shop.
I know, I believe that.
Well, thank you. Congratulations.
If you go to Captain Bill's barber shop, you get the real story there, because
Teresa.
that's where Teresa works.
Okay. The real lowdown.
The real lowdown.
Okay.
That's who cuts me.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, and thank you for being here from Cape Coral. We appreciate it. All right, we will, if you are nominated for a board or committee, now is the time that you can introduce yourself. So please come to the podium and introduce yourself.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. For the record, my name is Harvey Goldberg. I've applied for an appointment to the Planning Commission. I've served the city for 15 years in various capacities. I'm presently on the Planning Commission and would ask for your support for reappointment. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
My name is Paul Sacarato. I've been a resident of Punta Gorda for 26 years. I sat on the Board of Zoning Appeals. I currently sit as an alternate on the Code Enforcement Board. I am being nominated for the Planning Commission, and I ask for your support. I believe that in any board or commission, the most important thing you can do is ask the right questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more? All right. Seeing that there are no more nominees, then we will move into our public hearing agenda. And the first item on the agenda is a quasi-judicial public hearing. And I'll turn it
Yes.
over to you.
This is V-01-19, a quasi-judicial public hearing. So anyone who's going to be providing any evidence or testimony regarding this matter, please rise to be sworn by the clerk at this time. And when you approach the podium, please state your name and whether or not you've been sworn.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in today's proceedings?
I do.
Thank you.
This is a request by Neil Flynn, property owner pursuant to Chapter 26, Section 16.10 Punta Gorda Code, to allow a rear yard setback of 10.9 feet at its closest point instead of 20 feet, as is required per Chapter 26, Section 3.13D Punta Gorda Code, in order to construct a new screen enclosure on an existing non-conforming pool deck constructed in 1977 for a single-family residence located in a general single-family zoning district. Property is described as Punta Gorda Isles, Section 6, Block 51, Lot 22, also known as 2523 Rio Plata Drive, Punta Gorda, Florida.
Good morning. For the record, Lisa Hannon, zoning official, and I have been sworn. I'd like to enter the staff report in its entirety into the record by reference. The request is to construct and install a screen enclosure on the existing non-conforming swimming pool and deck. There is no expansion requested. Criteria number 1, special circumstances. The structure was constructed in 1977. At that time, zoning did not review the pool or pool deck plans. The current setback is 10.9 feet. At the time of construction, though, the setback required was 15 feet. There are still many existing non-conforming pools out there. We don't know how many, but there are still several out there. Therefore, no special circumstances have been found for this property. Criteria number 2 is about literal enforcement. The strict and literal enforcement of the code would not permit a screen enclosure for this property. Criteria number 3, that the hardship is not shared. Since there are some existing non-conforming properties out there, the hardship is potentially shared with other properties in the community. That the variance would not be injurious to any neighboring properties. There are many neighboring properties that do have screen enclosures, and so the request is not incompatible with the neighborhood. That this is the minimum modification, and the request is the minimum modification for a screen enclosure. He's not asking for any pool or deck extension, it's just a screen enclosure on the existing structure as it is. The request is not created by any person having interest. The conditions were existing on the property and were not created by the current owner, because the pool and deck and the property was constructed in 1977. Criteria number 7, it does not involve a prohibited use, and it is not a prohibited use to have a screen enclosure over a pool in the zoning district. It is not in conflict with the Comprehensive Plan 2040. The applicant, in his application package, provided 8 letters of support from neighboring property owners. Canal Maintenance was asked to do a summary and inspection. They did a May 3rd inspection of the wall and the cap. They found it in good condition, and it's not on any work program for the next 5 years. The building official states that screen enclosures are a safer barrier than an open pool with fencing. While urban design staff understands the request for a pool enclosure, the application does not meet the literal criteria of hardship. Therefore, we are unable to recommend approval of the request. Board of Zoning Appeals, however, recommended approval of the request unanimously. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Lisa? Gary?
So, this is the original concrete that was poured in 1977, as far as we know?
As far as I know, yes, sir.
And it's been shown to be stable in that period of time?
As far as I know.
And there was, you mentioned, but just to be clear, there was no damage noted to the seawall as a result of Irma, et cetera?
Correct.
So that would indicate that this is a very stable piece of concrete with a very minimal amount of weight to be put on it with the screen enclosure?
Correct.
Okay.
Does everybody understand when staff's recommendation, when we use the phrasing of the words we use?
Yes.
Okay,
I don't know if the public does, though, so you might want to clarify.
back to our staff recommendation. When we say those words, basically what we're saying is, because of the literal interpretation of the code, we cannot recommend approval. If we could, we would.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, for people to understand that it's staff's responsibility to enforce the code. And so quite often, while staff may not like the code, it's their responsibility to enforce it. And that's what we then, all of our committees, as well as council, we evaluate that, and we're always continuously updating or looking at individual situations. So, Vice Mayor?
A couple quick questions. In the package, it also said something about replacement of a cement wall. Is that the rear wall of the pool structure?
There is a raised wall that's on the deck of the pool structure now. That would be removed and replaced with the screen enclosure.
Okay.
There's a little, it's like a little knee wall. Let me go back to one of the pictures. Just a second, see if I can find.
Yeah, I saw a reference to this concrete wall, and I didn't know what that was.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because I couldn't really quite tell from the pictures either.
I think it was Carolyn Honor that mentioned that.
So while she's looking for those pictures, the criteria that is of concern here is, it reads, the strict and literal enforcement of the zoning regulations would create an undue hardship as distinguished from a mere inconvenience on the property owners. And typically, if the hardship is more or less self-created, that's also a reason why that criteria wouldn't apply. In this case, the property owner would have had the option, should they wanted a pool with a pool cage, to purchase another property that would be set back the adequate distance from the seawall. So a strict interpretation would suggest that it is not an undue hardship, nor is it a hardship that wasn't created by the applicant. So that's why the language that staff used was selected.
The picture right here kind of shows where the raised
Right.
wall is, and that would be removed and replaced with a screen enclosure.
Okay, and as far as the city's concerned, if there were to be a time when the seawall has to be replaced and something happens to the pool deck, the city would be held harmless?
We're not responsible for anything upland.
And this would, since it is a non-conforming structure already, and we're putting a non-conforming structure on top of a non-conforming structure, it would convey with the property if it gets transferred to another owner, correct?
That we would go with the property, correct. If it were to be damaged or destroyed more than 50% of the value, then it would have to be reconstructed to the current code that would be current at the time of construction.
Okay.
Do we know when the seawall was replaced last?
I didn't get that in the report. It was just said that it was in good condition and there was no damage and that it's not on the next 5-year work program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Then, do we want to hear from the applicant? We need to open the public hearing in order to do
The
that?
public hearing is open.
Okay.
Morning, council members. I'm Neil Flynn, the property owner at 2523 Rio Plato, and I've been sworn in. Thank you for your time for coming in this rainy morning. When I purchased the property in 1977, I wasn't aware that it did not comply with the current setback rules. When I wanted to replace the cement wall with a cage, I was informed at that point that I did not comply with the current setback rules. I'd like to just stipulate that, again, I'm not expanding anything. I'm just replacing an ugly white wall with a more conforming looking screen enclosure. That's going to increase the security of my property as well as the safety over those short white wall that's there now. Lisa did a fantastic job of explaining my situation, and I thank you for your patience.
Okay. The question, good. Questions for the applicant? Okay, this is a public hearing, so we will, I'll ask if, thank you for your time, and I'll ask if anyone else wants to opine in this situation. So this is a public hearing. If you want to make a comment, please come to the podium. You have 3 minutes. This is a public hearing. Please come to the podium, and you have 3 minutes. Last call.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, I have a motion that we proceed with approval for V01-19.
There's been a motion and a second. I think Debbie, second? And Jaha, actually, I heard him as well.
We have meeting.
To approve V-01-19. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Have fun swimming.
Congratulations. Thank you. Okay. We will move on to our ordinances, and we will have citizens' comments on 2 ordinances. These are both second readings, and they're both related to our retirement systems. One is first for the Punta Gorda Police Officers' Retirement System, and the other one is for the General Employees' Retirement System. If anyone would like to come to the podium and comment on these 2 second readings, please come to the podium and state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes. Okay, seeing no mad rush to the podium.
Yes, this is GA-01-19, which is the second reading of an ordinance that I'll read by title only. An ordinance of the City of Punta Gorda amending the City of Punta Gorda Police Officers Retirement System, restated pursuant to Ordinance 1644-10, amending Section 8, Disability, amending Section 17, Miscellaneous Provisions, amending Section 28, Deferred Retirement Option Plan, amending Section 29, Reemployment After Retirement, providing for severability of provisions, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
Are there any comments, questions?
I have a question from a constituent.
Okay.
Their question is, what is our policy on reemployment after retirement, and what's being changed? I would have asked this of them, not from up here, but I just got the letter last night.
The only changes that we're making in the retirement ordinances relate to the IRS code. Whatever changes in the IRS code, our retirement plans have to be up to date with the IRS code. Those are the only changes being made. So,
The ordinance has added to our existing ordinance an additional provision. No, that may not be correct. I don't. I believe it has to do.
This was written by our pension attorney. so
Yeah, I believe
we're
it has
not
to do with retirement after, the policy with respect to after disability retirement. There's some additional provisions
Okay.
that deal with certain opportunities to participate if the disability retiree is reemployed as a police officer. And if that is the case, then the retiree who is retired for disability purposes decides to be reemployed, then they discontinue the receipt of the disability benefits that they received as a retiring disabled officer.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, that's all right. We get lots of questions at all times, and we want to help clarify all of those. So, any other questions?
Motion to approve GA-01-19.
There's been a motion and a second by Jaha to approve GA-01-19. Would all those in favor please signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, the second one, GA-02, we have the same, GA-02-19.
Yes, and this is the second reading of an ordinance that I'll read by title only. An ordinance of the City of Punta Gorda amending and restating the City of Punta Gorda Municipal Employees Retirement System adopted pursuant to ordinance number 1671-11 as subsequently amended by restating the City of Punta Gorda General Employees Retirement System, providing for codification, providing for severability of provisions, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
Are there any questions?
Motion to approve GA-02-19.
There's been a motion and a second to approve GA-02-19. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we will move to the consent agenda. And we will take citizens' comment on consent agenda items. And we have the approval of minutes. We have, in the legal department, we have a resolution that changes the name of Shinep to the Coastal and Heartland National Estuary Program. I've got to get used to that. And invoice from our city attorney as his company, and another item related to Shinep from the finance department, Turtle Club sign request, and police department has 3 grant requests. Anyone wishing to make a comment, please come to the podium. You have 3 minutes. Okay, seeing none, would any council member like to pull any of the consent agenda items?
I don't want to pull anything, I just have a comment about item number E1. Since the name of the restaurant has changed and the owner has changed, I would just like to make sure that we are getting a full new lease with the corrected information on it for this request before this is done. Because right now, the lease is in the name of the Turtle Club with the old owner from Naples, and we do have a new local owner and new name for the restaurant. So I think that the lease needs to be updated to reflect that.
I'm not sure how will that does that
If
go?
that question is being addressed to me,
Yeah.
then yes, the lease will need to be updated. I have not been involved in any matters yet pertaining to that.
Well, we need to change the name on the lease. That's
Correct.
Well, the owner as well, because the owner is no longer the owner.
Well, but
It's up to the person
that would be
that was on it.
involved, yes, you're right.
Does that need to happen before we do this?
Well, Lisa, you're shaking your head, and I'm less concerned about the zoning issue, the sign issue, as I am with respect to who is operating under the city's lease. Now, the lease probably has a provision in it that says that it's transferable, but I haven't looked at the lease, and so I can't speak to the lease today.
So is it all right to approve this, subject to that change being made?
Well, the owner of the property or a contract purchaser typically has the ability to come in and ask for a zoning change typically. If the Lisa, I'm going to need for you to kind of weigh in on this. Who is the applicant for the sign change?
Chris Evans.
And is that the old owner or the new owner?
No.
Well, that's the current owner.
Okay, so if the owner
Blue Turtle.
of the property is the one made the application, that's appropriate.
Okay.
The question, it's a different question as with respect to the status of the lease. And that needs to be, and again, we're using a word owner, and we're using basically the lessee. So what portion of the property are they leasing?
Just one thing to interject, Mikhail Finkel. The lease is with Blue Turtle Punta Gorda LLC, doing business as the Turtle Club, and was entered into with Chris Evans on July 16th, 2015. So I believe we already addressed
I think
the
you did.
lease change. If I go back, I believe it was amended to the new corporate owner back in, if that was the change in 15, unless it is now changed hands again. But that is who the lease is currently with.
But it still has the old restaurant name on it.
No, it says Blue Turtle.
It said Blue Turtle.
If you look at it,
doing
the copy
business
we
as
have-
the Turtle
Okay.
Club.
It says Blue
Yeah, I
Turtle.
did look at it,
It says Blue
I saw
Turtle PG LLC. So it is,
So it's okay.
would appear to be okay.
Okay. And I move approval of the consent agenda.
I'd like to make one more comment before
I'm
we do
sorry.
that. I'm sorry. I just would like to address the change of Shinep, having served on that policy board now for a large number of years. It was the result of, and I'm proud of the support that the city has given specific to Shinep and the good work they've done, even under the umbrella of reduced federal funding. Their responsibility has expanded, is added to counties, it's including everything up to Lake Okeechobee. So they are going to be a spearhead, if you will, in the fight for red tide and blue-green algae issues that we have in southwest Florida. There was a lot of angst and changing the name to make it all-encompassing, and I want to tell you that this is a big deal. And I just wanted to be clear that we're going to have to get used to saying it a little bit differently, or thinking of it a little differently, but we still get to say Shinep.
It's not just about the Peace River watershed.
Exactly. It is about the Calahoochee and the heartland itself, because there is a rumor that certain things run downhill or downstream, and this is allowing them to encompass everything that comes towards us in the future.
So there's been a motion to approve the consent agenda
Second.
and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I had trouble getting that out. Okay, we will move to the regular agenda, and we'll take citizens' comments on regular agenda items. The first of those is an award of an agreement to Kelly Brothers of Fort Myers for the construction of Buckley's Pass. Their appropriations for Buckley's Pass project and assessments, the fiscal year 2020 PGI Canal Maintenance Assessment District budget status and discussion, fiscal year 2020 Burnt Star Isles Canal Maintenance Assessment District budget status and discussion, Gilchrist Park Area 1 parking, Hounds on Henry proposed small dog park expansion, and a request by Habitat for Humanity for the donation of city-owned property at 402 Helen Avenue for affordable housing. So if anyone has any comments on any of these items, please come to the podium, and you have 3 minutes.
All right, I am Sean Harrigan, 543 Madrid Boulevard, and I'm currently the chairman of the Bernstone Isle Canal Advisory Committee. So the information that's contained in the packet that you're going to review here this morning does not reflect the adjustments that were requested at our June 11th meeting of the Bernstone Isle Canal Advisory Committee. Specifically, we requested to remove $885,000 of the $910,000 that was identified for the removal of the south lot in the corner widening project. These steps were taken due to the recent tripling of the costs involved in taking on these projects. And our thinking was that the seawall alternative materials project, which will be completed in November of this year, would provide us with additional information about the infrastructure requirements moving forward. So we had requested for those things to be removed. What we did not request to have removed was $79,983 for the permitting that would be required to remove that south wall lot. And the reason we did not remove that was the extended amount of time required for the permits that would be involved with taking on this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying.
Good morning, Bill Hughes, former chair of Bernstone Isles Canal Advisory, now vice chair. I have a problem the way the budget's being presented. When I was the chair, we had a large neighborhood meeting about the perimeter dredge. And we had a big meeting over at the event center. The neighborhood was really divided. We passed to make the dredge, and we promised the residents that $95 would be gone once the dredge was paid for. And now we see a tentative assessment of $95 being continued for other projects. I don't think that's right. I think you should stop the $95 as we said it would, and then present the projects and not make it tentative, present the projects in a separate item. And I would request that that $95 tentative be removed, and we give the residents back what we promised them, and not continue that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, then we will move forward with the agenda. And the first item on the agenda is the award of agreement to Kelly Brothers, Inc. of Fort Myers for the construction of Buckley's Pass.
Good morning, Marion Pace, Procurement Manager for the record. Procurement solicited bids for the construction of Buckley's Pass. A total of 3 submittal packages were received and qualified for evaluation. The total lump sum bid to complete the project per the specifications is $1,499,399.16. The bid schedule, during the pre-submittal meeting, there was concerns of what would happen if we were to, by the contractors, if they encountered additional rock. You don't know what's going to happen when you start getting down there. Another concern was if they used a vacant property for staging for the project, if that owner told them to move or made them move or for whatever reason, they would incur an additional cost. So in the bid schedule, we did allow optional items, line items for different, I believe there was 3 different pay items if rock were encountered in various situations or incidents. And then also the cost if they were forced to move off a vacant lot. So the base bid, based on the specs, is the $1.5 million. However, if they encounter rock, or if they do come up with a requirement to restage, the contract price could be increased. So the total construction time to complete the project is 165 calendar days. A notice to proceed will be issued upon receipt of the contractor's insurance and performance and payment bonds. So we'll be issuing that letter if it's approved today, giving them the 10 days to get us, 10 business days to get us the bonds and all the insurance. Once we receive the bonds and the insurance, then we will issue a purchase order and notice to proceed, and that clock starts on the 165 calendar days. Staff recommends council to approve funds from the General Construction Fund and award the master agreement to Kelly Brothers, Inc. of Fort Myers, Florida.
Are there questions? Comments?
Comments, always.
Okay.
I'm delighted. I think this proves the point. It's a good thing that we did not procrastinate on this project, because we were concerned of escalating costs, and lo and behold, it came under a significant amount of what we had been estimated. So I would strongly encourage all of us to go forward with this project.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
There's been a move for approval and a second to approve the award of the agreement to Kelly Brothers, Inc. of Fort Myers for construction of Buckley's Pass. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Also, thanks for bringing up the idea, the concept of if they hit a rock layer, because the Pickleplex hit a rock layer in doing their dry retention pond, and that did drive up the cost,
Yeah, there is a certain consideration in their bid price, but.
as well as time.
Yeah, but if it goes above and beyond that, then we are looking at additional cost.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, if I understand it right, 165 days, we're going to be done in time for Hanukkah and Christmas, right?
The boat parade.
I haven't looked that far into the future.
I have. It was a loaded comment.
So you're saying you're having the
Hanukkah and Christmas at the same time this year, and
Oh.
it works out to be like within a couple of days of Christmas.
could be quite a celebration.
Yeah.
Okay. Appropriation for Buckley's Pass project and assessments is our next item. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Kristen Simeone, Finance Director. This is to appropriate the funds in fiscal year 2020 for the rest of the project. And again, we're still using the estimated amount that we've brought to you before, less the amount that has already been appropriated in past couple years. So we have received prepayments of assessments, so we're appropriating those so that we can transfer those for the project. Appropriating the interfund loan transfer for the difference from Utilities Renewal and Replacement Fund, and then, of course, appropriating the general construction. There's a little bit that we received from the land sale, which we've already accounted for, as far as it counting towards the actual reduction of the total project cost. However, we used, at the time, general fund reserve, so we're just paying ourselves back and then appropriating the cost that the city has to pay for the deferral agreement with the church, plus the city property. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, are there questions for Kristen? No questions. Okay.
So we're asking.
Well explained.
Oh, thank you. And we recommend approval.
I move to approve.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the appropriation for Buckley's Pass project and assessments. Will all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Now, we may be coming back maybe in September with some additional appropriations for some more prepayments. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll take a look.
Yeah, they're still trickling in, and we're gonna, obviously, it'll be in our fiscal year 2020 budget as well, so.
One quick question.
Sure.
Kristen, at what point do we refund the money that's already been paid out?
When it's, the project is fully complete.
Okay.
Because we don't know what they'll run into when they actually start out there. There may be, other things that are going on.
Okay.
So moving.
Okay. Item C, fiscal year 2020 Punta Gorda Isles Canal Maintenance Assessment District budget status and discussion.
Yes. So we brought this to the advisory board, and again, finance is still recommending the operating assessment of $550 plus the $100 that was set in place for Hurricane Irma assessment for the fiscal year 2020 budget. And we'll go into the future years in a minute, but this is just for fiscal year 2020. We're still proposing the same rate.
And this was approved by the
Yes.
PGI Canal Assessment
Advisory
Committee?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, they approved
Advisory
that.
Committee,
Yep.
thank you.
So again, this is just a history showing where we're at, and again, the hurricane assessment rate is there for another year. Again, the operating assessment part is the $550, $100, is currently scheduled through fiscal year 2022 for the Hurricane Irma repairs as well as the riprap mitigation. In fiscal year 19, we had estimated 87.5% coming from federal and state assistance for the Hurricane Irma seawalls. And so in fiscal year 19, we're just breaking it out that 21.5 million we expect to receive. And then in fiscal year 21, we had to split the project apart. The mitigation part we would expect to receive from FEMA and the state in 21. We would have to do a loan draw in fiscal year 2020 for the mitigation part if the permitting gets approved. For expenditures, fiscal year 2020, as per request, we are removing the 4 temporary employees that were being used for the Hurricane Irma project. 4% merit increases, pension is per schedule. Estimated increases are 12% for health insurance, 10% workers' comp insurance, and 5% liability insurance. 21 through 24, we estimate the mangrove trimming and inlet dredging will remain flat. Seawalls are approximately 1.8 million. It kind of grows a little bit each year, but as an average for the 4 years, 1.8 million. 4% merit increase, estimated increases of 3% for pension, 6% health insurance, 10% workers' comp insurance, 5% liability, and 3% all other operating. This is a schedule of the special projects that are currently in place for the PGI Canal Maintenance Fund. They do have a replacement vehicle, a 2008 pickup, in fiscal year 2020. They're currently undergoing their seawall maintenance alternative study in fiscal year 19. And then they have their PGI spoil site channel and the Ponce de Leon inlet widening and dredging project. And it's split over several years for design, permitting, and construction. So the special projects are as presented, and their funding is coming from planned reserves. The riprap mitigation we talked about was scheduled for fiscal year 2020 if the permitting does get approved. Transfer for repayment of the line of credit in fiscal year 2020. We hope to do our final payment on our current seawalls, and in fiscal year 21 would be the repayment for the riprap mitigation. So this is the current pro forma that we're showing. Again, the assessment rate for paying the 12.5% on the district's share of Hurricane Irma and mitigation is scheduled through 2022. Any questions? Yes.
I have 2.
Okay.
Kristen, with regard to the riprap mitigation, will that affect, we've talked about the $100 extra for Hurricane Irma repairs for 4 years.
Yes.
That's the plan anyway.
Yes.
Does that affect the $100 if we have to pay a portion of that as well? Will that- I mean,
That's
will we
already
need to-
included in there. If for some reason the mitigation project doesn't go forward, we may be able to drop off some of those funds in the later years.
Okay. And second of all, you mentioned in one of the slides, the spoil channel. Is this the channel that's going out the Punta channel that we're talking about to use for barge storage and so forth?
I could bring up a picture if you'd like of that.
Yes, please. Because we've talked about the fact that we're getting so far built out in PGI that we may have to put that channel in there adjacent to Colony Point Drive, and I'm just wondering if that's what this is.
Right here. Ponce, near the Ponce Inlet. It's right near the Ponce Inlet, proposed channel.
Yeah, okay, so that's what we're talking about.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's what it was.
Exactly what we're talking about.
Okay,
All set?
thank you.
Any other questions?
Now, we're not asking you to do anything today because on July 3rd, you will recess as the Punta Gorda Isles Canal Board and
I mean, as the
hopefully
We'll recess as the
council, and then
council.
go into the board, and then hopefully adopt these as tentative assessment for advertising purposes.
Okay. So then,
So
if there are
you're
no
okay with-
further questions, then we can proceed with the next one.
Yes,
Bernstone Isles.
okay. Okay, so for fiscal year 2020, again, we're going to start with what we propose as the fiscal year 2020 assessment, and that is all we're talking about today as far as the approved assessment for fiscal year 2020. The operating assessment is $460, and the dredging project assessment is $95, so the proposed assessment is $555. Here's the history of canal maintenance assessments. Again, we project for proposed the same as the last 2 years, and as we get into the next slide, I'll show you that we do that will continue for 1 more year. So for our revenue assumptions for BSI, the operating assessment is remaining at $460. The dredging assessment is through fiscal year 21, and if you recall, this project did come in under budget, so we reduced the assessment for this project as well as dropped off a year of financing.
And this is where the Canal Advisory Committee has requested that we not continue the $95, which would be the last bullet here.
Right. So when we put the pro forma together, we thought those projects had been approved by the board as far as having wanted to be included in the pro forma. We can talk about that in a minute, and could take it out, which would then, of course, you would not need the assessment if those projects did not go forward. I mean, in the future years. So currently, in what I'm going to show you, you're going to see the assessment of $95 in 22 through 24, and it was specifically to try and finish up those particular 2 projects. The inlet widening, which was the removal of the south side lock, and the channel corner widening project. As far as the Hurricane Irma seawalls, we do estimated, again, the 87.5% for federal and state assistance. In fiscal year 19, you'll see we're getting $763,000 is the share that we expect to get. BSI did not incur any financing on their 12.5% share. They were able to utilize their seawall funds as well as reserves to cover their cost. Funding for the riprap mitigation in future year is to come from carryover of any unspent seawall funds. The fiscal year 2020 expenditures, again, it removes the temp seawall inspectors for the Hurricane Irma project, 4% merit increase, pension per schedule, 12% health insurance, 10% workers' comp insurance, and 5% liability insurance. For 21 through 24, this is similar like PGI. Again, they kept the dredging and mangrove trimming flat. Seawalls are estimated about $300,000 for fiscal year 21 through 24, and all the other assumptions are the same. So these were the special projects. Again, the seawall maintenance engineering is currently underway. On the inlet widening barge access, which is the removal of the south side lock, in fiscal year 19, staff was asking for $55,000 additional. We had budgeted $25,000 for the engineering, but based on the current bidding situation and costs that have been coming in for engineering, they're estimating they need another $55,000, and they were going to get that from unspent dredging and seawall funds. And then you see how they split out the channel corridor widening project for design and engineering and construction, as well as the construction in fiscal year 20 and 21 for the barge access. I was not at the meeting, but I had listened to the tapes and everything, and what I had been asked, or what I thought was being asked, was showing a assessment rate that might be needed for these 2 projects, so that's why this new slide is in there. It was not presented to BSI. They were asking, well, what would the projects cost if you were looking at it from an assessment rate standpoint? So we did add this in here. So the inlet widening project, if you were just to look at it on its own and say, hey, what would the assessment rate be on this per lot, it would be $320. And then we just showed various ways you could split that out. And then we did the same thing on the channel corner widening. Debt service, again, was just for the perimeter dredging project and ends in fiscal year '21. And then we had the pro forma here. Again, this included the two projects, included the $95 assessment rate, as well as showing that in fiscal year 2022, even with that rate of tentative assessment of 95, the reserves would have been pretty low. But we had been recommending like just leaving it at the 95 until such time, because sometimes, we have carryover funds, so we would address it again as we got closer to that fiscal year. So we're not really asking for any final decision on a rate for any year after fiscal year 2020 at the moment.
So in order to reflect what the Canal Advisory Committee feels that their discussion included, we need to remove the expenditure for the two projects.
Yes.
In years 21.
So what I heard,
I believe, is that if
If you want to do exactly what BSI Canal Committee wants to do, take out the $95 for fiscal years '22, '23, and '24, take out the barge access inlet widening project and the channel corner widening project, let them deal with it at a future time. And then they'll get to it when they get to it. When we as, as a city staff put together 5-year pro formas, we like to include all of the various projects that a particular department, or in this case, the canal boards, are thinking of. It's a forecast. What if? That's what this shows. What if? That's all it shows, because each year we adjust the budget. So that's why it's in there. You can see that it goes to 21, 22, 23, 24. You're going to see totally different numbers each year as we get there. However, if you want to do exactly what they're requesting, take out another 95, take out those two projects, and there's your forecast.
Well, the two projects have been discussed. I mean, that is a fact. So it's, showing that the projects are under consideration is one thing. But I think the request that I've heard from the members of the committee was that they really would like to, they want to show something here that the residents are going to feel that we've listened, that we are doing what we committed to, and the $95 was something we said would stop. And so by continuing on $95, it just looks like, well, once we started the taxes, let's just keep on going because we can just keep on doing stuff. And so they want to show that they're living up to what their promise was. And so I clearly understand that and appreciate that. And they also want to have an opportunity to communicate with the community about the other projects so that the community feels like they understand what's going on and why. And so, and they want to take into consideration what may come out of the study that is due in November.
Right.
So I totally appreciate that as well.
So take out the 95, and we'll just, if you want to keep the projects in there, we'll just show projected deficits. And we're never going to balance, we're always going to balance a budget when we get to that particular year. We'll just show some deficits.
I guess I would like to defer to Mr. Harrington, who's the chair of the committee, to ask if we leave the projects in there. If you can you come to the podium?
Once again, Sean Harrigan, Chairman of the BSI Canal Advisory Committee.
How would you like for us to reflect this in this, in the pro forma?
Yeah, I think moving forward, the discussion that we had was that due to the significant increase in the expense over just 2 months ago, when we had reviewed this, and we review this on a regular basis with staff, that we were uncomfortable in moving this forward, particularly in light of the options available to the reconfiguration of how we replace seawalls. And as a result of that, I believe the consensus was, and I'm looking at Bill here, that we remove these expenses, not show them as something which would reflect an assessment. So to your point, then perhaps we show this as a deficit moving forward and not articulate an assessment that's going to be hitting the people of BSI for the next 3 years, 4 years.
And we're willing to do either. It's just a forecast.
So if you can do that,
Yeah.
and then what we'll do is we'll take a look at that and make sure that in the, if you can let me know, once we see this, it'll be on our agenda in the next council meeting? Is that correct?
Is this it?
This is without removing the projects, but if,
See, you
so
got it
this
right
is,
here.
this would just show the deficits. So you see in fiscal year 2022, using up all those funds, and you're actually in a deficit of 56,000. And then in fiscal year 23, and that shows the, I can move it down just a little bit, sorry. The assessment's at the 0 where we have the tentative 95. And then in fiscal year 23, you still haven't caught up, so you're still in a deficit of 23,000. And in fiscal year 24, you finally get a tiny bit of reserves of 9,000.
Basically, you're using up all the reserves.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I think that they're actually saying take the numbers out. Aren't you
Oh.
saying take all the numbers out as well?
Are
for the
you?
project.
The project out?
Take the assessment
Take the assessment out.
numbers out,
Okay. And leave the actual cost numbers in?
show the costs, and I think we need to reflect that this is an uncertain period. There may be
Okay.
other options available to us.
They're
Okay.
asking for this,
Okay, all right.
which we can do.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll leave the projects in. Footnote that really none of the, besides the engineering on, as approved by the board and hopefully by you as well, only the engineering to get started on the BSI inlet widening project, but not the construction, is not really funded, as well as the channel widening is not funded. Even though it's showing in the pro forma, they're really not funded projects.
Because they're out there in the out years, just like
Okay.
the general fund.
Okay.
If we project deficits in the general fund, we will never, ever bring to you a budget recommendation that's not balanced.
Right.
It won't happen. We're not going to bring to you fiscal year '22 a BSI canal budget that's not balanced. It ain't going to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And I think
Okay.
this just makes it clear that if BSI does want to go forward with these
Yes.
projects, they're going to have an assessment for it.
Yes, and we know that. It's just, we have what we need to go through.
Yeah.
We know what we need to go through.
Okay.
All right.
I think that's it. Any other?
So we'll move into, thank you.
Yep.
We'll move into unfinished business, and this is the Gilchrist Park Area 1 parking.
So this item is coming back. Mark? You're going to show the, so we have this item was discussed a while ago, and it's coming back as proposals to add some parking spaces in Gilchrist Park Area 1, which is the area we just finished a while ago. Actually, it's been a while now. We have a couple of options. There are more options out there. The fire department can opine on some of the options because there are some codes we need to adhere to. And when all is said and done, if city council wants to pursue any option, you could recommend this go to the sales tax committee and let them flush it out.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. Really wasn't prepared with a presentation. We have a couple of sketches here that we were asked to do. How do we Okay. What we were concerned with, and the reason the big circle is there, is for emergency vehicle access and circulation. If you have a dead-end parking lot, it becomes very congested when somebody's trying to come in and get out at the same time. So the first option, we just kind of eliminated the circle. And if I can get,
I think we've seen this one before.
Yes, you have. You have.
so those are the two options that we came up with, and we're looking for input. We haven't done any detailed cost analysis of anything, but this area is under a SwiftMud permit, and any significant changes, we'll have to go back to SwiftMud and have the engineering looked at and make sure the stormwater ponds are adequate. We're proposing, or assuming that the pond will have to get significantly bigger to do this option that's on the screen here. So you can see the